Marcus Reed stood in the doorway of his modest two-bedroom home on a cold December evening, staring at the woman he hadn't seen in 3 years. Elena, his ex-wife, the mother of his daughter, the person who had walked out of their lives on a Tuesday morning in September without looking back. She was thinner than he remembered, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, her jacket too light for the weather, her jeans worn at the knees. But it was her eyes that made his chest tighten. They carried a heaviness he'd never seen before, not even on the day she left. She wasn't here to ask for money. He could tell that much. She wasn't here to fight or to justify what she'd done. She was here because she had nowhere else to go. And somehow, without her saying a single word, Marcus knew it. Behind him, the house was warm. The heat hummed softly through the vents. Lily's laughter from earlier that evening still seemed to echo in the hallway, even though she was asleep now, curled up under her favorite blanket with the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. Marcus had just finished cleaning up after dinner, putting away the dishes, wiping down the counters the way he did every night. Routine. Structure. It was what had kept him going after Elena left. It was what had kept Lily safe and steady when her mother became a ghost they didn't talk about anymore. Elena shifted her weight on the porch, her breath visible in the cold air. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Marcus should have been angry. His family had prepared him for this moment. His sister, Rebecca, had said it 100 times. If she ever comes back, don't you dare let her in. She made her choice. His mother had been even harsher. She called Elena selfish, a woman who chose her dreams over her family, a woman who didn't deserve forgiveness. But as Marcus stood there, looking at the girl he'd fallen in love with at 19, he didn't see the woman who had abandoned them. He saw the person who used to sing to Lily before bed, the woman who would dance with him in the kitchen at midnight when they couldn't sleep, the girl who had cried in his arms the first time she held their daughter, whispering that she didn't know how to be a mother, but she'd try. He saw all of it. And he hated that he still cared. He stepped aside without a word and gestured for her to come in. Elena hesitated, like she couldn't believe he was actually letting her through the door. Then she walked past him, her footsteps quiet on the hardwood floor, and Marcus closed the door behind her. The warmth of the house wrapped around them both, but the silence between them was heavier than anything either of them could say. Marcus didn't know what to do with his hands. He crossed his arms, then uncrossed them. He leaned against the kitchen counter and watched as Elena stood in the middle of the living room, looking around like she was visiting a place she'd only dreamed about. Everything was different. The couch was new. The walls were a different color. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. The life that had continued without her was everywhere, and she could see it. "You want some tea?" Marcus asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Elena nodded, her lips pressed together like she was afraid if she spoke, she'd fall apart. He filled the kettle and set it on the stove, going through the motions because it gave him something to do. He pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet, the same mugs they used to use on Sunday mornings when life was simpler. He didn't know if she remembered. He didn't know if it mattered. When the tea was ready, he set a mug in front of her at the kitchen table and sat down across from her. She wrapped her hands around the cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth, but she didn't drink. She just stared into it. "I lost everything," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus didn't respond. He waited. "I went to Nashville like I said I would. I thought if I could just make it work, if I could just prove I wasn't wasting my life, then maybe it would all make sense." She paused, swallowing hard. "But it didn't. I played in bars where no one was listening. I worked 3 jobs just to afford a place to sleep. And every night I told myself it would get better, that I'd made the right choice." She looked up at him then, and Marcus saw the truth in her eyes before she said it. "I was wrong." He felt something crack inside his chest, but he didn't let it show. He kept his face neutral, his hands steady around his own mug. "I've been living out of my car for 2 weeks," Elena continued, her voice shaking now. "I ran out of money, ran out of options. She trailed off, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "I wanted to see Lily one more time. I know I don't have the right to ask. I know I gave that up. But I needed to see her, just once. And then I'll figure out what comes next." Marcus sat back in his chair, his jaw tight. He didn't know what he was supposed to feel. Anger would have been easier. Rage would have given him something to hold on to. But all he felt was a deep, aching sadness. Not just for himself, not just for Lily, but for Elena too. Because the woman sitting across from him wasn't the villain his family had made her out to be. She was just broken. "Where's your family?" he asked quietly. Elena shook her head. "My mom won't talk to me." My sister told me I made my bed and I have to lie in it. Her voice cracked. I don't blame them. Marcus wanted to say something cruel, something that would make her feel the way he'd felt when he woke up that Tuesday morning and found her note on the kitchen counter. But he couldn't. He'd spent 3 years building walls around his heart, and in one night, she'd walked right through them. You can stay tonight, he said, the words coming out before he could stop them. Guest room's empty. Elena's eyes widened. Marcus, I can't. You're not sleeping in your car, he said firmly. Not tonight. She stared at him like she was trying to understand why he wasn't yelling, why he wasn't throwing her out, why he was offering her kindness when she deserved nothing. And honestly, Marcus didn't understand it either. Thank you, she whispered. They sat in silence for a long time after that, the kind of silence that used to be comfortable between them, back when they were young and in love and thought nothing could ever break them. But this silence was different. It was full of ghosts, full of things they couldn't say. Eventually, Elena spoke again. How is she? Marcus knew she meant Lily. He took a breath. She's good. She's in second grade now. Loves art. Draws all the time. She's got your smile. Elena's face crumpled, and she covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back a sob. She asks about you sometimes, Marcus continued, his voice softer now. I tell her you're following your dreams, that you love her, that some people just need to find themselves before they can come home. Elena shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve that. I don't deserve you lying for me. I'm not lying, Marcus said. You did love her. You still do. You were just lost. And for the first time since she'd shown up on his doorstep, Elena let herself break. She cried into her hands, her shoulders shaking, and Marcus sat there watching her, feeling his own eyes burn. He didn't reach out, not yet. He just let her feel it, all of it. When she finally calmed down, she wiped her face and looked at him with red, swollen eyes. Why are you being so kind to me? Marcus didn't have a good answer. He should have hated her. His family expected him to. The world expected him to. But sitting across from her now, seeing how much she'd suffered, how much she'd lost, he realized something he'd been avoiding for 3 years. He'd never stopped loving her. Not in the way he used to. Not in the way that made him want to build a life with her, but in the way that made him care whether she lived or died. In the way that made him want her to be okay, even if it wasn't with him. I don't know, he said honestly. Elena looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling around the mug. And then Marcus did something that surprised even himself. He reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, searching his face for answers. He didn't have any. He just held her hand. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. They just sat there in the quiet warmth of the kitchen, two people who had loved each other once, who had broken each other, who had survived, holding on to something fragile and undefined. If you're feeling this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart. Because what happens next will remind you that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to see someone's pain as clearly as you see your own. Marcus pulled his hand back slowly and stood up. Guest room's upstairs. First door on the left. I'll get you some blankets. Elena nodded, standing too, her movements hesitant. As Marcus walked toward the hallway closet, he heard her voice behind him, soft and broken. Marcus? He turned. Thank you for not slamming the door. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Get some rest, Elena. She disappeared upstairs, and Marcus stood alone in the hallway, staring at the front door he'd opened instead of closing. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if letting her in was the right choice. But as he climbed the stairs and checked on Lily, watching his daughter sleep peacefully, he realized something. Hate was easy, forgiveness was hard. But maybe, just maybe, it was the only way forward. The next morning, Marcus woke up earlier than usual. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, just a pale gray light seeping through the curtains of his bedroom. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if last night had been real, wondering if Elena was actually in the guest room down the hall, or if he'd imagined the whole thing. Then he heard the floorboards creak, soft footsteps in the hallway. She was awake. He got up, pulled on a sweatshirt, and made his way downstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of birds beginning their morning songs. When he reached the kitchen, he found Elena standing by the window, looking out at the backyard. She'd changed into the same clothes from last night, but her hair was down now, falling past her shoulders the way it used to. She looked smaller somehow, like she'd shrunk into herself over the years. Morning, Marcus said quietly, not wanting to startle her. Elena turned, offering a sad smile. Morning. He moved toward the coffee maker, going through his routine. 2 scoops of coffee. Fill the water. Press start. It was the same thing he did every morning, the rhythm that kept his world steady. But today everything felt different. The air was heavier, the silence louder. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "A little," Elena said. "Your guest room is nicer than anywhere I've stayed in months." Marcus didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded. He poured 2 cups of coffee when it was ready and handed one to her. She took it with both hands, the same way she'd held the tea last night, like she needed something to anchor her. They stood there in the kitchen, not quite looking at each other, when they heard it. The sound of small feet padding down the stairs. Lily's voice, sleepy and soft, calling out, "Daddy?" Marcus's heart jumped into his throat. He looked at Elena, whose face had gone pale. She set down her coffee cup with trembling hands. "I should go," Elena whispered urgently. "I shouldn't be here when she—" But it was too late. Lily appeared in the doorway, her rabbit tucked under one arm, her pajamas covered in little stars. She rubbed her eyes with one hand and then stopped dead when she saw the woman standing in the kitchen. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Lily's eyes went wide. "Mommy?" Elena's face crumpled immediately, tears spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. She dropped to her knees on the kitchen floor, her whole body shaking. "Baby," she whispered. Lily stood frozen for just a second longer, her 7-year-old mind trying to process what was happening. Then she ran. She ran across the kitchen and threw herself into Elena's arms, and Elena caught her, holding her so tight it looked like she'd never let go. She buried her face in Lily's hair, sobbing openly, and Lily held on to her mother like she was afraid she might disappear again. Marcus stood there watching them, his throat tight, his eyes burning. He'd prepared himself for a lot of things over the years. He'd prepared to raise Lily alone. He'd prepared to answer her questions about why her mother left. He'd prepared to be enough for her, even when he didn't feel like he was. But he hadn't prepared for this. For the raw, unfiltered love between a mother and daughter that 3 years apart couldn't erase. "I missed you so much," Elena was saying, her voice broken. "I missed you so much, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Lily pulled back just enough to look at her mother's face, her own eyes wet with tears. "Why did you leave?" It was the question Marcus had been dreading. The question he'd tried to answer 100 different ways, none of them quite right. Elena cupped Lily's face in her hands, her thumbs brushing away her daughter's tears. "Because Mommy was sad," she said softly. "Really, really sad. And I thought if I went away, you and Daddy would be happier without me. But I was wrong. I should never have left you." Lily didn't understand all of it. How could she? She was 7. But she understood enough. She understood that her mother was hurting. And in the way that only children can, she forgave her without needing all the answers. "Are you staying now?" Lily asked, her voice small and hopeful. Elena's eyes flicked up to Marcus, uncertain. He saw the question there. The plea. He didn't know what to say. For a little while, Marcus said carefully, "Your mom's going to stay for a little while." Lily's face lit up like Christmas morning, and she hugged Elena again. Marcus excused himself, walking out of the kitchen before either of them could see the tears in his eyes. He went into the bathroom and closed the door, leaning against the sink, trying to steady his breathing. This was too much. Too fast. He'd spent 3 years building a life without her. Building walls to protect himself and Lily, and now those walls were crumbling, and he didn't know how to stop it. But when he looked at himself in the mirror, he realized something. He didn't want to stop it. The next few days passed in a strange, fragile rhythm. Elena stayed in the guest room. She helped with Lily in the mornings, making her breakfast, packing her lunch for school. She was careful not to overstep, always checking with Marcus first, always making sure he was okay with her being there. And Marcus let her. Because as much as it complicated everything, seeing Lily happy again was worth it. Lily talked nonstop. She showed Elena every drawing she'd made in the last 3 years. She told her about school, about her friends, about the tree they'd planted in the backyard last spring, and Elena listened to every word like it was the most important thing she'd ever heard. But Marcus's family didn't see it that way. On the 4th day, his sister Rebecca showed up unannounced. She knocked hard on the front door, and when Marcus opened it, she pushed past him into the house, her face tight with anger. "Is it true?" she demanded. "Is she here?" Marcus closed the door slowly. "Rebecca, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down." His sister's voice was sharp, cutting. "How can you let her back into this house after what she did to you? After what she did to Lily?" "She's Lily's mother," Marcus said quietly. She stopped being Lily's mother the day she walked out. That's not how it works, Rebecca. His sister stared at him, her eyes hard. You're making a mistake, Marcus. She's going to hurt you again. She's going to hurt Lily again. And when she does, don't come crying to me. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm asking you to trust me. Rebecca shook her head, her expression somewhere between anger and heartbreak. I can't watch you do this to yourself. Then don't, Marcus said, his voice firmer now. But this is my home, my daughter, my choice. Rebecca looked at him for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. The door slammed behind her, and Marcus stood there in the silence, feeling the weight of it settle over him. That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus and Elena sat together on the back porch. The December air was cold, but it felt good after the heat of the day's emotions. They didn't speak at first. They just sat side by side, watching the stars. Your sister hates me, Elena said eventually. She doesn't hate you, Marcus replied. She's just protecting me. From what? From getting hurt again. Elena looked down at her hands. I don't blame her. I'd hate me too. Marcus turned to look at her. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 3 years ago. Elena met his eyes, and he saw the fear there. The fear that he was about to ask her to leave. You didn't just leave to chase a dream, did you? Marcus said quietly. Elena's breath caught. She looked away, tears pooling in her eyes. You were drowning, Marcus continued. After Lily was born, something changed. You stopped sleeping. You stopped eating. You'd cry for no reason, and then apologize like it was your fault. I saw it, Elena. I saw you struggling, and I didn't know how to help you. A sob escaped her throat, and she covered her mouth with her hand. I thought if I just loved you enough, if I just gave you space, you'd get better. But you didn't. And when you left, I told myself it was because you were selfish. Because it was easier than admitting I'd failed you. Marcus, no, Elena said, turning to him, her face wet with tears. You didn't fail me. I failed you. I failed Lily. I had postpartum depression and anxiety, and I felt like I was drowning every single day, and instead of asking for help, I ran. I thought you'd be better off without me. I thought Lily would be better off with a mother who wasn't broken. You weren't broken, Marcus said, his voice thick. You were sick, and I should have fought harder to get you help. They sat there together, both of them crying now, years of pain and guilt and regret spilling out into the cold night air. I don't expect you to forgive me, Elena said quietly. I don't expect anything. But I want you to know that leaving you and Lily was the biggest mistake of my life. And if I could go back and do it differently, I would. Marcus wiped his eyes, taking a shaky breath. I don't know what happens next, Elena. I don't know if we can ever be what we were. But I do know this. Lily needs her mother. And maybe you need a chance to heal, to figure out who you are without the weight of everything you've been carrying. Elena looked at him, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time. What are you saying? I'm saying you can stay, not as my wife, but as Lily's mom, as someone who deserves a second chance. Fresh tears streamed down Elena's face, but this time they weren't just sad. They were relief. Gratitude. Something that looked almost like hope. Thank you, she whispered. Marcus nodded, looking back up at the stars. We'll figure it out, one day at a time. Christmas Eve came quietly. Marcus, Elena, and Lily spent the afternoon decorating a small tree in the living room. Lily hung ornaments she'd made in school, narrating the story of each one. Elena laughed for the first time in what felt like years, and Marcus caught himself smiling at the sound. It wasn't perfect. They weren't a family in the traditional sense, but they were something fragile and healing and real. That night, after Lily went to bed, Marcus and Elena sat together on the couch, the tree lights glowing softly in the corner. I never stopped loving you, Marcus said suddenly, the words surprising even himself. Elena turned to look at him, her eyes wide. Not in the way I used to, he continued. Not in the way that makes me want to go back. But I care about you. I want you to be okay. And maybe that's enough. Elena reached out and took his hand, the same way he'd taken hers that first night. Maybe it is, she said softly. They sat there together in the glow of the Christmas lights, two people who had broken each other and survived, holding on to something neither of them could name. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a happy ending tied up with a bow. But it was a beginning, a second chance, a reminder that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it makes space for the future. And sometimes that's all you need.